What's up guys, in today's video I thought it would be nice to tell you why I study for exams 2 months in advance. The reason I think this video might be valuable is because whenever my friends or classmates ask me how early I started preparing for my exams, they always react pretty shocked when I tell them that it is usually around 2 months in advance. And most people then think that that means I've been studying non-stop for 2 months and just don't have a social life. And while it is the case that my social life right now is pretty slim, it is certainly not the case that I study all day, every day, in order to get the grades that I get. So I thought that in this video it might be nice to explain why I studied for exams 2 months in advance, how I do it, and most importantly, how you can do it as well. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. The first point is why. Why on earth would you start studying for exams 2 months in advance when you can do it in a week? Well, that's actually a good question. And I do have to say that I have tried both ways. I've started studying for exams a week before, 2 weeks before, and 2 months before. And I definitely have to say that starting 2 months before has changed my life. And maybe not in a way that you would expect. It's not that my grades are much higher or whatever. It is simply the stress that I experience is so much less. When I start preparing for exams 2 months in advance, I know that I have all the time in the world to start studying, to try and grasp topics that I don't understand yet, and all of that just causes me to be way less stressed. In addition to that, whenever I start creating a study schedule 2 months in advance, I create a plan that revolves around the perfect study routine. And my goal with that is not to actually complete it that way. It is pretty impossible to be perfect, and that is not what I'm striving for. What I do is that I say, in a perfect scenario, I practice this topic this many times in this many different ways, and that way I think I would be able to crush my exam. And I do that for all the subjects that I have an exam for. And then when it actually comes to the days where I'm supposed to do a certain thing, I have all the space in the world to say, well, I'm really tired today, or I'm really not feeling like studying. I'm going to skip today. Certain things are important to do, so I'll move them to a further date. And some things are just a bit excessive, so I can just delete them, and it's fine if I do not do them. This way, I don't feel guilty when I can't complete my whole to study list, because I know that it's just not necessary. At some point, there's just a case of diminishing returns. And when I say, for example, for economics, in the perfect scenario, I would do 4 rounds of active recall and spaced repetition. I would do, let's say, 10 mock exams, and I would create a summary. I would redo some of the toughest homework questions and all of that. That is the perfect case scenario. But then when it actually comes to studying, and I have a day where I really do not feel like studying, or I'm really tired, or I'm sick, I just know, okay, is it completely necessary that I do this certain thing? Most of the time that answer is no, because I created a perfect scenario routine, and that is not something that I strive towards actually upkeeping. The reason I create that perfect scenario routine is so that I can just delete some things when I just don't feel like them or I can't do them. The biggest benefit from this system, I think, is that you have a lot of options to just simply not do things. When you schedule for the bare minimum, it's really hard to skip things, because in order to get a good grade, you actually need to do the bare minimum. And if you do less than that, that will obviously be reflected in your grades. But if you schedule for the perfect situation and you don't do everything, you're still gonna get a great grade. As I said in the beginning, I have noticed that just by using this system and knowing that I do not need to do all of it has honestly released me from tons of stress. And that is just really nice. Nowadays, when an exam week comes up, I'm not really that stressed out anymore, because I know I prepared well in advance. I know everything I need to know in order to get a good grade. I just might not know everything I need to know in order to get a perfect grade. And because, as I said, a perfect grade is not something that I particularly strive towards, that's fine. Of course, I want to get the best grade I can get, but there is a point of diminishing returns where if I study for 1 more hour and it's going to have an impact of 0.01 on my grade, then that's just really not worth it for me. I would rather spend that 1 hour on something that I actually want to do than get that 0.01 extra on my grade. Now I thought it would be good to demonstrate how I go about creating my studying schedule, because I know that that is something that a lot of students struggle with, so I thought I'd show it to you. So I thought I could show you best by sharing my screen with you. If you want this same layout, you can download this Notion template from August Bradley. So as you can see, this is basically just a calendar, and I use this calendar pretty much only for school, and for more personal stuff I usually use my Google Calendar instead. That way school and normal life is kind of separated from each other, which is something that I like, but you could of course also use just one calendar for all of this. And the reason I use Notion for this and not Google Calendar is because I like it better to create these tasks, and that is not something that is as easily done with Google Calendar, so that's why I use Notion for this. So we have my calendar here, and this is for February, and you can see here when we go to March that I have my exams here. My exams have the pinkish scheduled tag, so that's when I have my exams. I have 7, as you can see. So whenever I start planning for exams, the first thing I do is put the date of the exams in the calendar. Then what I do is for each subject individually, I start thinking about, okay, what are all the things I need to do in order to get a good grade. For example, for history, I know that it's really important for me to create active recall questions for every paragraph, and then have between 3 to 5 spaced repetition sessions. That kind of depends on the topic. And in addition to that, for history, I need to remember a pretty big list of dates, so that's really important to get started with on time as well. And I need to remember what we call kenmerkende aspecten, which are basically sentences that you use to describe certain historical events. And I believe that for my upcoming exam I need to remember like 15 of those, so that's not the hardest thing, but also something that you have to get started with in time. So whenever I figure that out, like, okay, I need to do this and this and this and this, then I start thinking about, okay, how much time do I need for it, and therefore how far in advance do I need to get started with it. So you can see, or actually you can't see here yet, but because whenever I do something I click on done and it disappears from here. But I started with creating active recall questions for my history exam around, I believe this weekend, the last weekend of January. And then I put the first 2 letters of every subject in order to just clearly be able to see what subject I need to do something for. And you can see here, when we go back to our example of history, that on February the 15th, I will do a spaced repetition session of history, paragraph 12.3, 12.4, and 13.1 and 13.2. And the great thing about using active recall is that one spaced repetition session usually costs me about 5 minutes per paragraph, if even that. So that's just a pretty effective and fast way to study, at least for me. Then we can look at another subject, which is math, for example. I know that for math I need to study a lot, because me and math aren't the best friends. Let's just keep it at that. So on this day I should have watched some tutorials about chapter 13 of math, but I actually forgot to do that. So I will put that in for today. In addition to that, I should have looked at business economics chapter 3, but I didn't do that as well, so I already put that in here, and I had already planned to get started with chapter 4 on this day as well, but I think I will just delete that one because I don't think I want to do 2 chapters in one day, so I'll just delete that one. And you can see that I already planned for chapter 4 to take multiple days. So I have another repeating business economics chapter 4 on Sunday and another one here on Tuesday. So I hope that it's kind of clear that I just look at each subject in a perfect scenario, what is everything that I would have studied, and then I just work back from there. My goal is to never have to do more than 4 things in one day, and even 4 things, I only put that there when I know that won't take that long. For example, here in the weekend you see business economics repeating chapter 6, history dates, history KA's, kenmerken en aspecten, and math diagnostic test. The only reason that I put 4 in here on that day is because I know that history KA's and history dates won't take that long. If, for example, all of these 4 things would cost me about an hour, I just wouldn't plan it all in one day, because I don't know about you, but I personally do not really like studying for 4 hours in a weekend, especially since I also have 4 things on Sunday, so that's just not something that I want to do. The only thing with this is, if you want a lower study load, is that you obviously have to get started earlier. The only reason that I'm able to basically do only one thing here, one thing here, one thing here, here and here, and here, for example, as well, is because I started with this in January already, which you can't see, which is unfortunate, but you'll just have to believe me on that one. But I started in January. So if starting 2 months in advance is something that you do not want to do, you can obviously still use this perfect scenario thing, but it will create a heavier study load. Another pro of starting this early is that you can just easily reschedule tasks to another day. If I'm sick on a day or have an unexpected appointment, I'll just put it on another day, and that's totally fine because I didn't have to do that many things on a day anyway, so it's fine when sometimes there's something added to that. If you have watched my video about how I study for exams, you will also know that I use a pretty specific schedule for my spaced repetition sessions. Here we have my retrospective timetable. You can see on the 4th, I already repeated them and it went bad. And these 2 I did later. And then I did them again the day after, and this one went great, this one went bad, okay, bad, great, okay, great. And I also marked the questions. For example, here you can see I didn't know this one and this one. This one was, I had partly right, and all of the ones that aren't marked I got right already. So that way I only practice the questions that I don't already know. And the only time I will repeat every question again is 1 or 2 days before the exam. Because it is of course possible that in the meantime you have forgotten some of the questions, and then it's important to get that information back. But in any other way, I do not practice questions that I already know the answer to. And therefore, studying also becomes a lot quicker, because instead of, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, instead of 11 questions, I only need to do 3. And this will probably not take me longer than a minute, so it's pretty quick and efficient, and it has resulted in some pretty awesome grades, so I'm not going to change anything about it. So, to conclude, the perfect planning system for me is to create a perfect scenario schedule and then just have no stress about skipping some of the things, but obviously still remain disciplined enough to actually do enough of it to still get a good grade. I hope that I explained this properly. If you still have questions about something, then please do not hesitate to ask your question in the comments down below, and that you like this video. If you did, please like it, and if you want to see more of my videos, please consider subscribing and ringing that bell so that you'll get notified whenever I upload a new video, which is on Monday 5 PM my time, which is GMT +1. I hope to see you again next week.